The message was short, quiet, and impossible to forget. Pray that I return alive. Samia Shahid sent it just before boarding a flight from the United Kingdom to Pakistan. There was no drama attached to the words, no explanation, just a sentence that sounded less like anxiety and more like a premonition. Officially, she was traveling for a simple reason. Her father was unwell. His condition, she was told, had worsened. The family needed her home. For Samia, refusing that call was unthinkable. She had grown up believing that family duty came before everything else, even before her own safety. But beneath that obligation was fear. By the time she reached the airport, Samia had already rebuilt her life once. She had escaped a marriage she never chose. She had married for love. She had found happiness far from the expectations that once controlled her. Going back meant stepping into a world where those choices were not forgiven. Friends sensed her hesitation. Her husband begged her not to go. But Samia believed she could still belong to both worlds, to the life she chose and the family she loved. So she boarded the plane. In the hours that followed, she stayed in contact. Messages were calm, reassuring. She said she was fine, that everything was okay, that she would be home soon. Then the messages stopped. That single sentence, sent before takeoff, would echo louder than anything she said afterward, because Samia sensed danger before anyone else did. Samia Shahid grew up in Bradford, West Yorkshire, a city shaped by migration and layered identities. To the outside world, her life looked ordinary: schools, friends, part-time work, the rhythms of a modern British upbringing. But inside her home, another world quietly governed everything. Samia was raised between two cultures. Outside, she absorbed the freedoms of British life: choice, independence, movement. Inside, her family held tightly to Pakistani tradition, faith, and a strict sense of reputation. Every decision carried weight. Every action reflected not just on her, but on the entire family. At the center of that world was her father. Samia adored him. She was known as a devoted daughter, obedient, respectful, eager to please. His approval mattered more to her than comfort, more than freedom. When he spoke, his word carried authority. And when he asked something of her, refusal was never really an option. The Shahid family was well known in their community. Businesses, relatives, social ties. Visibility came with expectation. Reputation was not abstract. It was something guarded daily, discussed openly, defended fiercely. In that environment, a daughter's choices were never her own. Samia learned early how to navigate this balance. She smiled. She complied. She kept parts of herself hidden. Independence was allowed, so long as it stayed within invisible boundaries. And when those boundaries were crossed, consequences followed. Love in Samia's world was real, but it was conditional. It depended on obedience, on silence, on staying within a version of herself that others had designed. She was loved deeply, but that love came with rules. Love came with conditions. When Samia turned 25, the conversation she had always feared finally arrived. Her parents told her it was time. In their world, marriage was not a personal milestone. It was a family decision, a responsibility, a correction. Samia was informed that she would marry Shakil, her cousin from their ancestral village in Pakistan. The choice had already been made long before she was asked. Shakil was not a stranger. Samia had known him since childhood. She had never seen him as a partner, only as family. Worse, there were details she couldn't ignore. He had recently been released from prison after shooting another man during a land dispute. The past was explained away, forgiven, minimized. What mattered was alignment. Samia did not say no, not because she wanted the marriage, but because refusing would mean disappointing the people she loved most. In her family, consent did not look like enthusiasm. It looked like compliance. The wedding that followed was extravagant. Hundreds of guests, expensive clothing, gold jewelry. A 4-day celebration that drew relatives from the United Kingdom to Pakistan. From the outside, it looked like joy, like success, like honor being secured. Inside, Samia was unraveling. She smiled for photographs. She wore what she was given. She thanked everyone who congratulated her. But privately, she messaged friends, calling it the biggest mistake of her life. Money flowed freely. Outfits, gifts, even a house provided beside the family home. None of it brought peace. Cultural pressure wrapped itself around every moment. Gratitude was expected. Obedience was assumed. Questioning the marriage would not just shame her, it would shame everyone connected to her. So, Samia stayed quiet. The ceremony was completed, the contract signed, the family celebrated a union they believed was right. But consent without choice is not freedom. Money paid for the wedding, not for her happiness. Marriage did not bring Samia freedom. It changed the shape of her confinement. After the wedding, Samia remained in Pakistan, living in a house provided by her family, just steps away from relatives who watched closely. The village was small, the rules were strict, privacy barely existed. Every movement, every interaction felt observed. Shakil's presence only deepened that sense of control. He monitored her constantly, where she went, who she spoke to, how often she checked in. Calls were expected. Video chats were demanded. Even when Samia returned to the United Kingdom, the surveillance followed her across borders. She came back alone. Shakil remained in Pakistan, waiting for immigration documents that would allow him to join her in Britain. Officially, she was supposed to help secure his visa. In reality, Samia hesitated. The distance gave her space to breathe, but it also triggered resentment. From Pakistan, Shakil tightened his grip. Daily calls turned into constant demands. Missed messages led to accusations. Samia felt watched even when no one was physically there. Friends noticed the change in her. She was anxious, restless, guarded. The woman who once laughed easily had grown tense, as if she were carrying an invisible weight. The marriage existed in two realities. In public, it was described as normal, successful, proper. In private, Samia felt trapped by expectations she could not meet. Visa delays stretched on. Months passed. Shakil grew angrier. The future he believed was owed to him, a life in the UK, citizenship, status, felt increasingly out of reach. And Samia became the obstacle. Distance did not loosen control. It exposed it. The physical separation only intensified the pressure, transforming the marriage into something that followed her everywhere, even in silence. What was meant to be temporary separation became something else entirely, a warning that geography would not save her. Distance didn't free her. It tightened the grip. Samia did not set out to fall in love. It happened quietly, away from the expectations that had shaped every other decision in her life. Through mutual contacts and online conversations, she met Ali, a British Pakistani man working in Dubai. Their connection was immediate, but what drew Samia in wasn't romance alone. It was safety. With Ali, conversations were calm. There were no demands, no surveillance, no fear of saying the wrong thing. He listened. He believed her. For the first time in years, Samia felt seen as a person, not as a role, not as a responsibility, not as a symbol of family honor. She told him everything. The marriage she hadn't chosen, the pressure she lived under, the constant control that followed her across borders. Ali struggled to understand how a loving family could place their daughter in a situation that left her so isolated. To him, her life felt negotiated away. Their relationship grew slowly, carefully. Samia knew the risk. Choosing Ali meant defying not just her husband, but her parents, her relatives, her entire support system. Discovery would not lead to arguments, it would lead to consequences, so they kept it secret. In October 2013, they met in person in London. The connection was real. There was no hesitation. What Samia felt with Ali wasn't rebellion, it was relief. With him, her future looked open for the first time. But every moment of happiness carried an undertow of fear. Samia understood what this choice meant. Love without approval was dangerous. Independence was interpreted as betrayal. And yet, returning to the life she had been assigned felt impossible. With Ali, she imagined something radical, a life shaped by her own decisions. No watchers, no permission, no silence. For the first time, Samia wasn't complying. She wasn't enduring. She wasn't pretending. For the first time, she chose herself. Leaving the marriage was not as simple as walking away. Because Samia's wedding to Shakil had been conducted under Islamic law and not registered under British civil law, there was no straightforward legal exit. To end it, she would have to challenge the marriage within the same system that had bound her to it. So, she did something dangerous. Quietly, and without her family's knowledge, Samia approached the Islamic Sharia Council in the United Kingdom. There, she made a claim few women in her position dared to voice: that her marriage had been entered under pressure, not free consent. That she had agreed because refusal was never truly allowed. Under Islamic principles, consent matters. If a marriage is found to have been conducted through coercion, emotional, psychological, or social, it can be annulled. Samia spoke under oath. She described the pressure, the fear of disappointing her family, the absence of real choice. Shakil was contacted and asked to respond. He refused. That refusal mattered. With no defense offered and Samia's testimony standing uncontested, the council ruled the marriage invalid. The decision severed her ties to Shakil under religious law. In that moment, Samia was no longer his wife. She signed the papers surrounded not by family, but by a small circle of trusted friends. There were no celebrations, no announcements, just relief, quiet, controlled, fragile. Her family knew nothing. They still believed she was married, still believed she belonged where they had placed her. The truth existed in a narrow space between legal recognition and family perception, a space filled with risk. Because Samia understood what would happen if they found out. To her parents, this wasn't freedom. It was defiance. It was shame. It was exposure. And yet, she moved forward. The marriage was over. The future was hers, at least on paper. But secrecy has a cost. Freedom achieved quietly. Danger awakened loudly. Samia did not tell her family when she married Ali. She couldn't. The ceremony was small, quiet, and deliberate, held in Leeds, far from the eyes of those who would have tried to stop it. Only a handful of trusted friends were present. There was no spectacle, no family gathering, no approval sought or granted. For Samia, it was enough. The same cleric who had declared her first marriage invalid conducted the ceremony. This time, the consent was unmistakable. She chose the man standing beside her. She chose the life she wanted. And unlike before, the marriage was also legally registered in the United Kingdom, giving it a recognition her first union never had. For one brief moment, the fear receded. Samia felt light, relieved. Friends later recalled how happy she looked, how different. She spoke about the future openly, about living with Ali in Dubai, about building a life that wasn't negotiated by anyone else. But secrets don't stay buried forever. When her family learned the truth about the annulment, about the new marriage, about Ali, the reaction was immediate and explosive. What Samia saw as survival, they saw as disgrace. In their eyes, she had crossed an unforgivable line. Reputation shattered overnight. Whispers spread through extended family networks. Questions turned into accusations. Anger replaced concern. Her choices were no longer discussed in private. They became a public wound. To her parents, this wasn't just about love. It was about control lost, about tradition broken, about honor exposed to judgment. Ali was not only the wrong man, he represented everything Samia was not supposed to choose. Calls turned hostile. Conversations became confrontations. Any attempt at explanation was dismissed as manipulation or sin. The family that once protected her now viewed her independence as an attack. Samia understood what this meant. There would be no reconciliation without surrender, no peace without obedience, no forgiveness without erasure of the life she had chosen. And yet, she did not step back. Because to her family, love no longer looked like happiness. It looked like betrayal. The first warning came not as a threat, but as violence. One evening in Bradford, Samia was walking with her cousin when several men approached from behind. There was no argument, no robbery, no mistake. They struck only Samia, beating her legs with metal rods before fleeing into the darkness. Her cousin was untouched. The message was precise. Samia reported the attack to police. Her injuries were visible: deep bruising, swelling, pain that lingered long after the incident. Investigators quickly realized this wasn't random street violence. It was targeted, planned, a punishment rather than a crime of opportunity. At the police station, Samia made a decision. She called her mother, on speaker. What followed exposed far more than the attackers ever could. Instead of concern, Samia was met with anger, insults, accusations, words meant to shame rather than protect. The officers in the room heard everything. Samia wanted them to. It was proof. Proof of the environment she had been living in. Proof that the danger didn't come from strangers, but from pressure rooted deep inside her own family. From that point on, fear stopped being abstract. This wasn't about harsh words or disapproval anymore. It had crossed into something physical, measurable, inescapable. Friends urged her to leave, to put distance between herself and the people who refused to accept her choices. Even so, Samia hesitated. Cutting ties with family felt like losing a part of herself, but staying felt worse. The attack changed how she moved through the world. She watched over her shoulder. She measured every step. Independence had come with a cost, and that cost was now visible on her body. The warning had been delivered. The danger was no longer theoretical. Dubai felt like oxygen. When Samia's visa was finally approved, the decision was made quickly and quietly. Friends helped her prepare. A ticket was bought. Bags were packed with only what she could carry without drawing attention. There were no goodbyes, only urgency. Ali met her there. For the first time in years, Samia lived without constant surveillance. She drove, she cooked, she laughed. Ordinary freedoms became extraordinary relief. The fear that had followed her through Bradford loosened its grip, replaced by a sense of safety she hadn't felt since before her first marriage. She documented it openly. Photos appeared online, smiling, relaxed, alive. Messages to friends sounded hopeful. She spoke about the future, about building a family.
Trust me and my husband are so eager to become parents. Allah's testing our patience like hell. Seriously.
She couldn't wait to have kids?
About finally feeling seen rather than managed. This wasn't rebellion, it was peace. And still, Samia didn't sever her past. She stayed in contact with her family, calling often, trying to soften what had hardened. She believed that time and distance could heal what confrontation never could. That once the shock faded, her parents might see that she was safe, loved, and not lost. She wanted reconciliation, not conflict. Ali worried. He understood the risk better than she did. He knew that in some families, distance doesn't reduce anger, it sharpens it. But Samia held on to hope. She had spent her life trying to balance two worlds. She believed she could still do it. Dubai was meant to be temporary refuge, not exile. A pause, a chance for everyone to breathe. She believed that space would calm the storm. She was wrong. The call came from home. It wasn't sudden, it wasn't frantic. That made it worse. Samia's mother and sister told her that her father's health was failing. Diabetes complications, hospital visits, quiet warnings layered beneath concern. The message was simple, but heavy. He may not have much time left. For Samia, it cut straight through every boundary she had built. Her father wasn't just a parent. He was authority, approval, history. The man whose pride had shaped her life. The man she had never learned how to disappoint without breaking herself in the process. Guilt took hold quickly. She replayed every argument, every unanswered call, every step she had taken toward independence. The thought of her father dying without reconciliation was unbearable. No freedom felt worth that price. Ali heard the fear immediately. He urged caution. He reminded her of the threats, of the attack in Bradford, of the silence that often followed her attempts to explain herself. He didn't forbid her. He couldn't. But his concern was unmistakable. This was dangerous. Samia knew it too. But family duty had been carved into her from childhood. In her world, a daughter does not abandon a dying father, no matter the cost, no matter the risk, no matter the history. The pressure intensified. Her sister booked the ticket. The plan was presented as settled, temporary, safe, just a visit, just enough to say goodbye, just enough to ease a father's heart. Samia tried to convince herself this was closure, not surrender. Before leaving, she made careful choices. She left documents behind. Her return ticket was kept elsewhere. Precautions born from instinct, not paranoia. At the airport, Ali asked her again to reconsider. She didn't. Instead, she sent a message to a friend, a quiet confession wrapped in humor and fear. "Pray that I return alive." It wasn't melodrama. It was intuition. Love didn't pull her home gently. It pulled her back into the fire. Samia arrived in Pakistan quietly. There were no celebrations, no public welcome. She stayed her first night with a friend, not family. A small decision that revealed how cautious she had become. Her passport, her return ticket, and her documents were left there for safekeeping. She did not trust what might happen if everything stayed with her. It was a visit, she told herself, nothing more. In the days that followed, Samia moved between family homes, grave sites, and obligations. She visited her aunt's resting place. She spent time with her father. Outwardly, things appeared calm, civil, almost normal. But she stayed alert. Through it all, she kept in constant contact with Ali. Messages throughout the day, reassurances at night. She described where she was, who she was with, how she felt. He listened carefully, reading between the lines, searching for what she might not say out loud. On July 19th, Ali told her about a bad dream he'd had. Samia didn't dismiss it. She asked him to pray for her safety. It was the last time she would ask. On July 20th, the messages stopped. At first, it didn't seem alarming. Time zones, poor signal, family gatherings, ordinary explanations filled the gap. Ali waited, then waited longer. The silence stretched. Calls went unanswered. Messages remained unread. The digital thread that had connected them every day went cold without warning. That silence did what words could not. It confirmed fear.
I've kept on waiting and waiting. She didn't call me back. I started calling her, texting her. Nothing happened. And this was not Samia.
By evening, a call reached local police in Pandari. A man reported that his daughter had died after falling down the stairs. The name he gave was Samia Shahid. By the time Ali realized something was truly wrong, the worst had already happened. The messages had stopped. Fear had begun. The call to police came from inside the family. Samia's father told officers that his daughter had fallen down the stairs. An accident, he said. A tragic one. When police arrived at the house in Pandari, they found Samia's body at the bottom of the stairwell. Her shoes were nearby. Her handbag rested close to her feet. A black scarf covered her face. Foam was visible around her mouth. Her father explained that Samia lived in the house with her husband, naming Shakil. When officers asked where he was, the answer was vague. No one had seen him. No one knew where he had gone. An autopsy was conducted quickly. Just as quickly, the body was released. Within hours, Samia was buried. Under local custom, rapid burial is not unusual when a death is considered natural or accidental. And according to the initial police report, there were no visible signs of violence. No reason, they said, to delay. But the explanations began to shift almost immediately. Some relatives said she had suffered a heart attack. Others claimed asthma. Another version insisted she slipped and broke her neck. Local media repeated different accounts, each one offered with certainty, none supported by clarity. In the confusion, one detail remained constant. Questions were not being welcomed. When Samia's husband Ali arrived in Pakistan, he was told the same story. An accident. Nothing suspicious, nothing to investigate. But he saw the speed of the burial, the lack of transparency, the contradictions piling up before grief had even settled. He went to the police himself, and for the first time, the narrative changed. Ali spoke about the divorce, the secret marriage, the family's anger, the threats, the attack in Bradford, details that had never appeared in the original report. Only then did investigators consider another possibility, that this was not an accident, that the scene at the bottom of the stairs was not the end of a story, but the final act of one carefully controlled. By the time doubt entered the room, Samia was already buried. The story had been decided before the questions were asked. The truth surfaced quietly, not through witnesses, not through confessions, but through a document that should have mattered from the beginning, the autopsy report. When Ali finally obtained a copy, the conclusions were unmistakable. A reddish-brown bruise circled Samia's neck. The official cause of death was not a fall, not a heart condition, not an accident. It was strangulation. Further findings deepened the alarm. Evidence showed she had been assaulted shortly before her death. Details that made the original explanation not just incomplete, but impossible. This information had existed from the start, and yet it had changed nothing until now. By the time the autopsy's conclusions became public, Samia had already been buried. No second examination, no preservation of evidence, no chance to reconstruct the final moments of her life. The delay was devastating. Questions followed quickly. Why had police dismissed the death so easily? Why was the family allowed to proceed with burial within hours? Why had early reports claimed there were no signs of violence when the autopsy clearly showed otherwise? Suspicions grew that the initial investigation had failed Samia. Whether through negligence, pressure, or influence, the system had moved on too quickly. The result was irreversible. Critical time was lost. Evidence was gone. Accountability became harder with every passing day. Ali refused to stay silent. He held a press conference. He showed photographs of the bruising. He spoke openly about the threat Samia had faced, the fear she had expressed, and the dangers she believed awaited her in Pakistan. The response was immediate and dangerous. Ali began receiving death threats. Police assigned him protection. The story had crossed a line. What was once framed as a private tragedy was now being described publicly as what it appeared to be: a killing. This wasn't a tragic accident misunderstood in hindsight. It wasn't bad luck. It was a crime that had been misclassified from the very beginning. This wasn't an accident. It never was. Once the case reopened, the silence broke. Shakil was located and taken into custody. Under questioning, he admitted to being with Samia on the day she died. His account was chilling and deeply revealing. He claimed he had tried to stop her from leaving Pakistan, that he searched for her passport and return ticket, that when she refused, the confrontation escalated. According to his statement, he assaulted her, then strangled her when she tried to escape the house. He did not stop there. Shakil alleged that Samia's father was present, that he did not intervene, that his silence was approval. It was a confession that pointed outward as much as inward. Investigators now believed Samia's death was an honor killing, punishment for defying family authority, divorcing without consent, and marrying a man outside their approval. To them, her independence was not just unacceptable, it was unforgivable. But believing something and proving it are not the same. Despite the confession, the case began to unravel under scrutiny. There were no eyewitnesses willing to testify, no preserved physical evidence due to the rapid burial, no recordings, no forensic trail strong enough to survive court. Shakil later retracted parts of his confession. Samia's father denied everything. Her mother and sister fled Pakistan before they could be detained. Arrest warrants were issued, but enforcement stopped at borders. One by one, the accused were released on bail. Years passed. Shakil eventually remarried. He attempted to move to the UK. Samia's father was released due to insufficient evidence and died not long after from kidney failure. No convictions were secured, no sentences served. The system acknowledged that Samia had been killed. It just couldn't agree on who would pay for it. What remained was a case filled with admissions that led nowhere, responsibility spread thin enough to disappear, and a family fractured beyond repair. The truth had surfaced, but the proof never followed. Truth existed. Justice did not. Samia Shahid did not ask for much. She did not ask to abandon her family, her culture, or her faith. She did not seek to shame anyone or erase where she came from. What she wanted was smaller, and, in some circles, unforgivable. She wanted to choose. Choose who she loved. Choose how she lived. Choose the shape of her own future. That decision defined her final years. To some, Samia became a symbol of defiance. To others, a cautionary tale. But beneath the headlines and legal arguments was a young woman who spent her life trying to belong to two worlds at once, never fully accepted by either. Her family's silence speaks loudly. There have been denials, counter-narratives, claims that she was confused, manipulated, unhappy elsewhere. But there has never been a shared acknowledgement of what the autopsy proved, never a public reckoning with the fear she voiced before boarding that plane. Justice, in the legal sense, never arrived. No conviction, no sentence, no final accounting. What remains instead is a record of failures, of systems that moved too slowly, of investigations that ended too early, of cultural pressures that blurred the line between control and care. Samia's life did not end because she disappeared. It ended because she was found. Found asserting autonomy in a space where obedience was expected. Found refusing to return to a role already chosen for her. Found believing that love and duty could coexist without punishment. They could not. Today, her story is remembered not only for how it ended, but for what it exposes. The danger faced by women caught between tradition and independence. The cost of silence. The risk of returning to places that never forgave your freedom. Samia Shahid's legacy is not tragedy alone. It is warning. She asked only for the right to live on her own terms. That choice cost her everything.